Hi there. We are continuing with the book of Mark. We are in chapter 12 and looking at verse 28 through to the end of verse 34. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given a good answer, he asked him, "Of all the commandments, which is the most important?" "The most important one," answered Jesus, "is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, and with all of your soul, and with all of your mind, and with all of your strength. The second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these." "Well said, teacher," the man replied. "You are right in saying that God is one, and there is no other but Him. To love Him with all your heart, with all your understanding, and with all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself is more important than all burnt offerings and sacrifices." When Jesus saw that he had answered wisely, he said to him, "You are not far from the kingdom of God." And from then on, no one dared to ask him any more questions. Now, this passage is rich and has a lot of stuff. And it also has the basic kind of summary of the gospel. And so there's that famous story of a rabbi who was asked to sum up the Bible on one leg. And he basically looked at the people and said, "Love God, love people, all the rest is commentary." And so I find this passage, the same passage I think is in Matthew 22, the greatest commandment passage is where I place my foundation. And so Christianity gets hard, it gets confusing, it gets frustrating, people suck at times. But when it gets too much for me, I just go back to this place: love God, love people. Everything else builds onto that. Everything else is an extra. And if we can really truly get love God, love people, and then remember that people include your neighbor, it includes your enemy, it includes those that society call the least of these, especially the widows and the children, then it gets really challenging. It gets really commitmentful. That's a word. But it's a great place to start. It's a great place to seek kind of rest. Love God, love people. That's great. I can live my life for that. I could die for that principle. When it gets to confusing things like women in ministry and homosexuality and how is baptism done, full water immersion or sprinkling, and what should we wear to church, and are piercings okay, and tattoos, and depending on your context and your circles, some of those questions get really big and important and scary and tough. Love God, love people. Go back there, start there, and then let's work our way to those questions. I'm not saying we should never answer those questions. I'm not saying don't think about those stuff. I'm saying start from the place of love God, love people. If you're going to err, and it's not erring, but err on the face of love. And so that is it. But I liked what he said, and I've only really noticed this now. "Well said, teacher, you are right in saying God is one, there's no other but Him. To love Him with all your heart, with all your understanding, with all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself is more important than all burnt offerings and sacrifices." What were burnt offerings and sacrifices? Those were the law. Those were religious duty. I said duty. And so what the man is kind of reflecting back to Jesus is that, so you're saying that love is more important than being religious in the right way? So you're saying that love is more important than church meetings looking the right way? So you're saying that love is more important than maybe a whole bunch of lists of things I don't do? I don't swear, I don't get drunk, I don't smoke, I don't have sex before I get married. You're saying love is more important than that? Because maybe if we get that love is more important than keeping all those lists, maybe that will help inform the way that we respond to people that get drunk, that use bad language, that smoke, that have sex before marriage, all those kind of things. And maybe as we love people, we will want to walk journeys with them instead of judging them, instead of casting them out of the church, instead of drawing a line and saying you have to stick on this side of the line. Maybe we'll welcome them to our side of the line and say, "Hey, I love you, let's journey this together, let's figure out the other parts of this in relationship." And hopefully love does cover a multitude of sins. Now what's interesting, as far as I know, Matthew only uses 3 of these, but in Mark there's a 4th one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And so you could really take each one of those and look a lot more deeply at them. The heart we generally think of as emotions, as gut, as will, as making decisions. The mind, thinking about things, contemplation. And so in both of those areas, what you feel and what you think and know, in both of those areas, you need to love God with all of that. I think a lot of us have given God our bodies, we've given him our time and our activity. So that is love the Lord with all your strength, maybe, with everything you can physically do, with showing up on Sunday at church, and with showing up with the homeless guy lying in the gutter outside your house, and showing up on the small missions trip, and showing up in incarnating yourself in a community where there is need and brokenness, and saying, I'm going to live there, I'm going to try and be Jesus, or a reflection of Jesus in that community. So I think we've got that, but have you given your mind to Jesus? The questions you wrestle with, the things, the doubts, the things you're unsure about, have you given that over to God and said, God, I'm not sure of all this stuff, but I'm going to trust you and love you, and I'm going to wrestle with this, but let's work it out together. I give you my biggest doubts and fears about Christianity, and about whether every single word in the Bible is true, and about what it says to some of those difficult questions that society is asking at the moment. Your heart, your mind, your understanding, and all of your strength. Everything. Again and again, as we saw with what belongs to Caesar is Caesar's, what belongs to God is God's, everything is God's. Luke 16, Jesus says, if you want to follow me, you've got to deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me. Give up yourself. I want everything. God is a jealous God. God is a greedy God in the sense of desiring everything. It's not greedy because he deserves it, because he created us, and because he knows the best way for us to live. The thief comes to steal and kill and destroy, we see in John 10 verse 10. But Jesus says, I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. And if you do not have Jesus in your life, and if you're not surrendering everything to him, then you're not living life to the full. And if your life feels overburdensome, and if you feel guilty all the time, and if you feel condemned for a whole bunch of stuff, then you probably haven't given your life to Jesus, because then that stuff, as you work through it, becomes joyful. And I know at the moment, like a week ago, I was in a really low place. And it's not that I'm totally out of that, but I know that I'm not spending enough time with God. I'm not spending enough time in prayer. Starting to do these videos again means I'm back in the Word, and so I'm starting to think about stuff, and I'm starting to talk about it, and hopefully as people respond, you will challenge me about my thoughts, and you will add your own. That would be amazing. That's why there's a comment section below. But when I'm in a good place with God, and when my relationship with him is well, then I should be in a place of joy, and these things should come naturally, loving God with all my heart, soul, strength, and mind, and loving my neighbor as myself. And then the last point is that as I love my neighbor as myself, that is a demonstration of my love for God. And that's why these two things, or this commandment that feels like part 1 and part 2, is not. Because as I love my neighbor well, that shows that I'm loving God with all my heart, soul, strength, and mind. And so the commandment is to love God. What that looks like is loving my neighbor. Let's do that more. Have a great week. And now I'm going to hit the stop key.